What's going on? It's Mustafa Ali. It's loud as hell in here, but you should be listening to Card Subject to Change.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show.
And now, your hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the for frequency's sake tag team champions of the world, the Wizard CZ, and never wrong, Nick Bull.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the podcast by the fan for the fan. Of course, I am your host, never wrong, Nick Bull. Joining me is my co-tag team champion. He's another year older, folks. He celebrated a birthday this past week. The one, the only, the Wizard. Wiz, how you doing?
Man, I'm a little sleepy. I think you know why.
You're older.
I'm an old man. But I'm doing good. Well, I think maybe because we were up until about 3:30 in the morning, managing some shows, managing some WCW shows on 2K24.
Doing some serious business. Doing some show prep, I guess you could say, right?
Hey, we a booker's life never ends, right?
That's right. Well, we're glad that everybody here is on board for another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change podcast. Of course, we are powered by Low Pies Pizza. We're built by Durham Remodeling. We're colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and we're protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. So glad you're along with us this week. We're very thankful this week that our guest is joining us. He recently suffered an injury, had some surgery, but is toughing it out and is joining us. He is definitely a prominent name in the independent scene here in the Midwest. We know him from DreamWAVE, from AAW, from Zawa, just a few promotions I can think of off the top of my head. This guy's matches are a treat. I can't wait to pick his brain on some things. If you see one of his matches at a show, it's usually one of the most physical matches for sure. And I've never left a show saying, hey, that was a bad match of his. Usually this man has a good match, and we're so happy to have him on the show. He's rehabbing right now, so we're extra happy he's here. Please welcome the one and the only Hartenbower. How you doing, buddy?
Guys. How we doing?
We're doing good. I've noticed you're kind of laid up there. We'll get to that in a little bit. We're going to put your mind at ease here and hopefully talk some wrestling. We're going to kick it off. I'm going to ask you what I ask every other first-time guest on this show. Why pro wrestling? What got you hooked at whatever age it got you hooked in? What was it?
For me, it was always the larger-than-life aspect of it. So growing up, I liked the big the big 300-pounders, the big juiced up, the guys that now today you're like, maybe maybe not so great, but that was the stuff that I liked. I liked the pyro. I liked the entrances. I liked the big moves, and of course the storytelling.
Of course, storytelling is one of the best parts. Is there a particular wrestler or story that you can remember that really got you hooked?
Specifically off the top of my head, like when I first started watching, I was at that prime Monday Night Wars, but I mean the NWO was big for me.
So were you a WCW guy during that time or a WWF guy?
So I was both.
Okay.
I know some people are like, oh yeah,
sure.
I loved both. I was the one that was DVR, not DVR at the time, but
VHS.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I would flip. I'd had multiple TVs in multiple rooms, and we would go back and forth because you had that first hour of just WCW, and then it's like, oh man, gotta get the VCR ready just in case, and switch back and forth during commercial breaks. So I loved them both.
it really was the best of both worlds with Raw and Nitro. I try to explain to people. Nitro came on an hour earlier, so you watch the first hour of Nitro, and then I would flip over to Raw, because back then TNT would replay Nitro right away after. So you just
after. I forgot about that. Yeah.
It was so awesome. I missed that time. It was such a great time in wrestling.
It was a great time for everything. Like
it was.
I've been so nostalgic lately, like looking I've had time the last couple weeks, but just watching just different YouTube videos of like just everything from like my childhood, like just like the action figures, like Pokemon cards. Like I don't like actively collect anything right now, but I'm just like looking at all of the stuff that I used to collect when I was that age, and how it's all come back. And I don't know, it's just really nostalgic lately. And yeah, that's the Monday Night Wars were like the peak of my childhood.
What's old is new again.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanna follow up. You mentioned the NWO. Were you a Wolfpack or a Hollywood guy?
Wolfpack for sure. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were my guys growing up.
What was the crystallizing moment in your life that said, I have to do this?
I wish it would have, and I'm sure everybody's story is different, but I think now you hear, the kids are starting when they're 15, 16 years old. And I think maybe it's with social media, and there's more reputable schools in the area, or at least, in the Midwest as a whole. But I didn't get in until I was pretty much, I was like 25, 26. And I don't think it was it's now or never type thing, but DreamWAVE was offering, I actually went to a few DreamWAVE shows as a fan, and they were doing some seminars, and it was, no experience, all experience levels, whatever it was. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it, because I would go to a couple of the after parties, and, I would go up to a couple of the guys, oh man, when I was a kid, and I mean, now I have people do that to me at shows. Oh, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a wrestler. I'd like to get in there with you. Okay, well, go ahead, come help set up a show. I'll help you out all I can. But, so I was doing that, and then it was like, okay, well, I've talked about this long enough. I'm going to try it. And I think, we're coming up on 13 years since that happened. And, I think at that time, had you told me, okay, you're going to try this, you're going to get one match in front of a crowd, you're going to be introduced as the hometown guy, and especially, and I'm sure, you guys might be able to relate to this, but like, I don't have the same friends that I had when I was 18 years old, right, or when I was in high school at all. Like,
right.
So when I was like 25, 26, I'm like, oh man, I don't have any friends or family or anybody. Like, nobody's going to be like, cheering for me or anything. But it's like, if you'd have told me back then, okay, you're going to have one match and then, maybe fade into whatever, I probably would have been like, okay, cool. That'll be awesome. I tried it and it was fun and it was a chapter of my life. I don't think I ever would have guessed that it would have been this big of a part of my life.
What would the Hartenbower of today, you say, about 13 years ago, you approached this and wanted to do this. What would the Hartenbower of today say to that Hartenbower back then 13 years ago? What would you pass down to that younger version of yourself that just getting into it and just getting your feet wet?
I would say to dive in further, because at first, I was very lucky to be around the people that I was around. not everybody comes up at a DreamWAVE. Because some of my first times outside of DreamWAVE at Indy shows, some of the things that I was seeing and hearing in locker rooms, I'm like, I'm glad that I'm surrounded by the people that I'm surrounded by.
Sure.
And then not even that, but I mean, I think like the first time that I wrestled outside of DreamWAVE, I think there was 7 people in the crowd.
Right. Right.
And you have to do those things.
Sure.
You have to do those things. You have to travel. You got to get in cars, not knowing if you're going to get paid, not knowing if you're going to be a security guard, not knowing if you're going to be a referee, or if you're just helping set up and tear down. I would have told, I would tell my younger self that, knowing what I know now. But again, I don't think I looked at it like, I don't think I was like, I'll be alive when I'm 36. I'm 37. See, I'll be alive when I'm 37, let alone still wrestling. So I don't know. Some people just think, differently. So I think I would have told myself to dive in more, because for the first probably 7 years, I just did maybe 1 or 2 shows a month. Okay. As opposed to, hey, you can really, make a name for yourself, but you gotta, and everybody has their own, their own different path. So I guess I wouldn't change anything, but I would definitely say, hey, don't worry about work. Don't worry about whatever it was that I was putting ahead of wrestling back then. At the end of the day, doesn't matter.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead, CZ.
You were coming up in DreamWAVE. Who are some of the people that you came up with over the last 13 years?
So at that time, and even just the promoter himself, because some guys, when they come up, and they might be taken advantage of by promoters or, people that are, because they weren't exactly running like a training school at that time, but I was around at every show and just kind of picking people's brains and getting in the ring before the shows. And I was kind of thrown into the fire, but some people, they might throw you in the fire and they don't care if you burn. So I was really lucky having Jay Repsol around. But then specifically talent-wise, I was put with Waylon Beck very early on as opponents, and then we later tagged for a good 2 years. But
former
just
tag team champions.
Yes, and I might be wrong on this. We might be the longest reigning tag team champions in DreamWAVE history still. That might not be true. It might be the hype, or I know Zero Gravity held the titles a few different times, but we're up there to this day. So just being around him. But like the Bucky Collins, Christian Rose, Matt Cage, all those guys. I learned a lot from those guys. 2012, 13, 14, 15. And still today, anytime I talk with those guys, we're always kind of picking each other's brains.
Those are names that I'm familiar with. I announced some of those names here in the Quad Cities at SCW Pro.
Yeah.
In my short stint as a ring announcer.
Yeah. SCW was one of the first places that I worked outside of DreamWAVE. In fact, it might have been my first ever payday in wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, like I was in the car with. I think it probably would have just been Rose and Cage, and I think that would have been maybe 2014.
Okay.
Maybe 2015.
You talk about being a tag team. You're on singles now. What's the biggest hurdle with putting together a good tag team match as opposed to putting together a singles match? I know there's more moving parts, but is it a lot different for you per se? I know some people look at it differently. I'm a big tag team wrestling fan, so I perk up whenever I hear tag teams. So is it harder to put together something?
Well, I think anytime you're adding more, pieces,
you're adding more input, right? You got 4 guys, wanting to.
Yeah, you got a lot of input. You've got a lot of egos. You've got, the more moving parts there are, the more things that can go wrong. I'm kind of a control freak, so I prefer singles matches. But there's so much that you can do. Like stuff that like now, like I wouldn't love to watch. I guess I have watched some of the tag matches back at DreamWAVE during that run. But there's stuff now when I'm in a random tag match that, you can just, the psychology of it, and just being active when you're not in the ring. You can do so much when you're not actively in the ring that, you don't think about instead of anticipating what's coming next. So yeah, I prefer working singles, but I love good tag team wrestling.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay. When you're getting ready for a match, getting ready to come through that curtain, names called, music hits, what's the one thing in your mind you're wanting to convey to the crowd? What's one thing you're trying to do when you go out there before the match starts? It is what trying to get inside of Hartenbower's head here. What is Hartenbower thinking, getting geared up for a match, and what is he trying to convey when he comes out?
On a non-serious note, I hope that they can't tell how bad I have to pee, because I don't know what it is, and I don't know if you've had anybody else mention this, and I know I've talked to some of the boys before. They're like, yeah. Almost every time I'm about to go out there, I feel like I have to pee. And I don't know if it's maybe like butterflies or if it's, I don't know what it is. But but on a serious note, if you're a baby face and you're coming out and you're doing the whole, let's go insert town name, or, if you're a heel and I prefer to be a heel, honestly. Because technically their reaction shouldn't matter to me. I want them to boo me. I want them to cheer me. I want them to react. It's the old John Cena of, as long as they're making noise, I don't care if they're cheering or booing.
Yep.
But I think one of my big things, and this goes back to the larger than life thing. I'm not 6'5". I'm not 6'8". I'm not 320 pounds. I'm not, my diet is always so up and down. But I'm usually not like this big jacked, like, monster. However, sometimes I forget that I'm in the grand scheme of things, in the general public, I'm a relatively intimidating, larger person.
Sure.
So, you hear a lot of people say like, hey, if some guy in the crowd thinks he can beat you up, that's not good. I always kind of want everybody in that crowd to know that they can't beat me up, and that the guy in the ring or the guy coming to the ring is going to get beat up, or, whatever. But, I always try to, show my intensity and all of that pretty much right away.
And I'm glad you said that word, intensity. I think it's a calling card for you. You kind of said it yourself. You're kind of like the everyman's wrestler. Like you said, you're not 6'5". You're not 320 pounds. You do have a larger than life look when you're out there. And you're right. You want to make the crowd believe that you could kick their ass if you needed to. So I think the intensity is what comes across when I see you coming out for a match, or when I see you in a match, is definitely intensity. I think you do a pretty good job of doing that. I really do.
Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes you're going to have fans that, depending on, I mean, I've worked shows in bars, I've worked shows in parking lots, and we, and a lot of us have, but you're going to have somebody who's maybe had one too many beers, and I would be a smaller guy, because I know I've had people like stand up to me before and they'll be like, huh, I didn't realize you were that big. Never mind. So that's, that's always helpful.
Let me go back a little bit. We were talking about, what's going through your mind as you're getting ready to come out that curtain. Do you have any kind of pre-match ritual to get yourself geared up for, for the show, for the match? Is there anything you do in particular that puts you in the mindset to get in that ring and just show out?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the show itself. It depends where I'm at on the show. If I'm the opener, if I'm in the main event, I'd like to sit here and say that, oh, well, it doesn't matter if there's 10 people out there or 400 people out there. It matters. I'm still going to do the same things in the ring for the most part. My work itself will be pretty similar. But as for, how I'm pumping myself up or how I'm feeling, I've seen guys listen to headphones. They have their headphones in and they're listening to music. And, I'm a pacer. I just walk quite a bit. I know, like, on like bigger shows, like if you see me in the locker room, maybe 20 minutes before I'm about to go out there, I'm walking back and forth with my head down. Some of the locker rooms I've been in over the years, the DreamWAVE locker room specifically, it's getting more and more crowded in that locker room. But there are some good spaces to walk back and forth that I'm very comfortable in. I do a lot of walking, but specifically in the moments before my music hit, the very rare, smack myself around. But usually I'll let out a big grunt or two, take a swig of water and go.
Excellent. I think this is a good time to take our obligatory timeout, pay some dues to our fellow network shows. On the other side of the break, we're going to have our weekly moment of focus, and of course, plenty more to talk with Hartenbower. So stay tuned. We will be right back in just a moment.
For frequency's sake, has you covered on all things sports. From the squared circle to the hardwood and the gridiron to the speedway, we've got something for everyone. Walk down the aisle with the boys from Card Subject to Change every Sunday as they take a deep dive into everything pro wrestling. Head on over to the hardwood with Doug Green and Watching the W each week for all the news from the WNBA. Want more insight from Pit Row? Check out the Green, White, and Checkered podcast where they give their insight on everything happening on and off the track. Need your gambling fix? We've got you there. Dan Hancock and Gotham Gambling will help you cover the spread with the Golden Ticket Show. Football more your style? Explore the waters of NFL DFS with DFS Deep Dive with Brian Craighead and Jordan Kernan each week. More into the science portion of the game? The Professor John Bush and Dennis Michelson take you into their science lab and dissect your week in the data lab. Need to know who to start last minute? The network's flagship show, For Fantasy's Sake, is here in a pinch. The fellas come to you live every football Sunday from 10 to 11:30 Central with the week's best DFS, gambling, and lineup advice. And wrap up your Sundays with Joe Winkle and Nick Brinks as they come to you live with educated ignorance, looking at all the day's action. Not enough football on Sunday? Not a problem. Kick your feet up at lunch on Monday and slip into the football lounge with Mark and Dan while they look at the week that was in news, notes, and more. For frequency's sake, you know what we mean.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show, episode 148, Blood, Sweat, and Beers. I'm your host, Never Wrong Nick Bull, joined by the Wizard CD. We are joined this week by Hartenbower, sitting here talking wrestling, all sorts of wrestling. We're going to delve more into that in just a couple minutes. But we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge JT Energy here in his weekly segment we like to call A Moment of Focus.
Welcome to A Moment of Focus with the feline phenom, JT Energy. And this week, the Card Subject to Change podcast, you have Mike Hartenbower, right in studio, blood, sweat, and beers. And unfortunately, Mr. Hartenbower clotheslined someone's head off a little too hard, and his body did not agree with what happened. So this brings me to my moment of focus. It's time for all of us to focus on being ready for the unexpected. Because the unexpected will teach us things that we never thought we needed to know. But you have to go through the unexpected to learn those things. So be ready to not be ready. This has been a moment of focus with the feline phenom, JT Energy.
Thank you, JT. Always love having you on the show with your weekly moment of focus. If you are just tuning in, this is the Card Subject to Change podcast. We are powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. In studio with us is Mr. Hartenbower, big Midwest wrestling personality all over the map, especially in Illinois. Mike, I want to delve in. JT talked about your injury, clotheslining someone a little too hard, as he put it. Talk about.
I wish.
Well, that's what we're going to go with here.
Yeah, I might just go with that. I don't know.
Talk about what your mindset is when an injury like this happens. I know you said off air you haven't had a major surgery before. This is first one of there, but what is your mindset as you are going into surgery, coming out of it, and working your way now, the start of your journey back into the ring?
Yeah, specifically, going back to, those early days where I was maybe only wrestling once a month. I had a partial quad tear that didn't require surgery. I had to do rehab on it, like structured rehab. It wasn't just like, hey, Google this and go to the gym and do it yourself. I did that for, I think, maybe like six to 8 weeks. And then I was back in the ring, and I don't think it was anything that I ever thought twice of again. But, a lot of the physical matches that I've had over the years, I've been pretty lucky to walk away relatively unscathed. But I mean, there have been some times where I'm like, ooh, man, my back doesn't feel right, or my knee, or, my elbow, or my neck, or my shoulders kind of moving around weird. But it's usually stuff that goes away, stuff I work around. So specifically, this bicep, it happened in a match. I kind of knew right away that it was a little bit more than just, a stinger or something like that. I was hoping that that's what it was. But someone actually got me a bag of ice, like, at the end of the match, because of course I had to be, this was at AAW. So of course I was out there for another 35 minutes after the match, as part of the Bravo family. So I was, you can probably see me like bend over ice, whatever. But, at the time, you're not thinking that you're going to miss any time. You think, the conversations that I had the first week or so after the injury, it's kind of apropos that card subject to change. I mean, it's the number of cards that have changed in the last 2 weeks alone, and then moving forward, hopefully not as long as expected, but a lot of cards being changed. But I'm sitting there, reaching out to people saying, hey, I think I can just wrap it up. I think I can wrap it up and go. You don't quite, maybe down the road, if, other people who have dealt with injuries before, they know, okay, I did this. This is legit. I'm going to be out, and they can prepare with it. But you can't really, something that I was talking about quite a bit. I know I'm kind of going all over the place here, but you can learn to lock up. You can learn headlocks. You can learn how to take bumps and all of that. But this is really hard. They don't teach you how to deal with injury. I don't think they teach that in the major sports either. And I'm sure they, don't necessarily teach it like at the performance center, how to deal. I know they probably have like sports psychologists that help with that kind of stuff. But my first couple, 10 days or so was, I'm just going to wrap it up and wrestle, and we'll go from there. And then the reality kind of set in that, maybe this is a little bit more severe. So I think now I've kind of, I don't want to say relieved, but now I kind of know, like, okay, here's the process. Here's the timeline. I can't move my arm for 2 weeks until they take this cast off. And then, I don't know if it's a cast, I don't know what it's called, but then I believe I'm in like an immobilizer, one of those like Terminator type like braces for another 2 or 3 weeks after that. And then I think I'm pretty free after that to start rehab. So, you kind of start to mentally prepare. And, I've spent the last couple of weeks kind of not moping, but sitting here eating pizza and, more I'm kind of treating myself a little bit. But I mean, I think I have a timeline in my head of like, okay, let's get the diet back together. Let's, cause I mean, I haven't been in the gym, which for me is like a huge mental, like, just killing me. But yeah, it's been a process that I'm, learning, and taking it a day at a time.
I like how you brought up the point, this whole thing's the great unknown, right? You go to wrestling school, you learn how to take bumps, you learn things through wrestling for years. You don't learn how to recover and do the physical therapy afterwards. I mean, it's kind of like you're jumping into the deep end and learning to swim all over again, right?
Right. Yeah, I like I said, I was pretty fortunate not to have any of those injuries, but and I kind of like to divide my wrestling career in two parts, and this second part that I'm in right now, I've been going pretty hard and heavy for 4 years. Two shows a week, every week, sometimes more. And they don't teach you how to live without it. So now, I can imagine those guys that, have been going at it for years and years and years, doing that kind of schedule, and then they get an injury. I can't imagine what that's like. Or I guess I can imagine it, but it's like, I had a conversation earlier today where, I don't want to put a timeline on anything, in a public forum necessarily, but
sure,
if it's 6 months, 6 months at my level is a lot different than 6 months at WWE's level. Because, for the places that I work, I might be missing 2 or 3 shows. But if you're missing, 2 or 3 shows could be a week's worth of TV at WWE. Mm-hmm. So 6 months is a lifetime at that level. So I think I'm just kind of trying to stay positive with it and take it a day at a time.
It definitely sounds like, you got a positive mindset with it. Thank you for being on here with us. I know it's probably hard sitting there with it and answering questions and stuff, but I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about DreamWAVE. Anytime we have a DreamWAVE guest on, love talking DreamWAVE wrestling. I feel like during the break, I kind of turned around here and I'm like, yep, I remember the last show I was at, It was a while back. It was Good as Gold. It was when you took on Christian Rose and for the championship, and it was a physical, bloody affair. And I love the Columbus building in LaSalle. I think it's a cool venue. There's something magical about it. I've never walked away from a DreamWAVE show disappointed, like, oh man, I'm never coming back. Right. And I just think there's just something special. They're doing something right, and you're a part of that. That's got to feel good to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I came up at DreamWAVE, and that first DreamWAVE run that ended in December of 2016. At that time, I was really, 2015, 2016, I was wrestling a little bit more. I was traveling more, but still not, anywhere near what I've done the last 3 or 4 years. And when DreamWAVE came to an end there in 2016, it was like kind of a gut punch. And then we did that reunion show in 2019. And then the pandemic kind of, threw a wrench in some plans there. But coming back full bore in 2022, and it was like, okay, I'm not the same person I was, 5-6 years ago, not the same performer, not the same wrestler. Let's go. And to get specifically, talking about that show that you were at in December, it was like, all right, this is what I'm here for. This, and it's that DreamWAVE championship. So that show specifically was very special. But just as a whole, being a big part of DreamWAVE is if you'd have told me that, in 2012, that I would be, a big part of it. That's pretty cool.
That's cool. Cool.
Yeah. Oh, do you have any favorite matches or moments from your time in DreamWAVE?
Specifically DreamWAVE. Going back to, again, like I said, I kind of divide my time in wrestling up. It's easy for me to think of the last couple of years there, but I'm going to try to think about something from that 2015-16. I think match-wise, there was a couple fun ones with Zero Gravity. Those were fun matches. It was always fun to throw those guys around because at that time I was 270 pounds and they're like, pretty smaller guys. So
sure.
Always fun to kind of press them and throw them around. But this second run of DreamWAVE here, I had a real fun match with Brian Keith. I had a really good feud with Manders that so there, and card subject to change. There was supposed to be a lot more to that feud, and what we ended up seeing as the me and Manders kind of wrapped that up, but the tag match with myself and Mike Bennett versus Mance Warner and Manders, that's probably the one that sticks out to me the most. Just the way we built it, the signs that we put on the door to kind of warn people, like, hey, we know we pride ourselves on being family friendly. However,
right.
You got 450 people walking into the door and they see that and they're like, huh, okay, do we want our kids to see? No, it's not going to be that bad, right? No. And the kids loved it. The kids absolutely loved it. I'm like, okay. That match, I could actually talk about just that match alone for an hour.
I believe it.
What is it about that match that what is it about that match that takes you back to that match? Was it how violent it was, how in your face it was, how real it was? What was it?
I think a little bit of everything. I think just the fact that LaSalle doesn't get wrestling like that, and it wasn't like too. death matchy. It wasn't. There wasn't glass. There wasn't fire. There wasn't syringes and cinder blocks, and like it was just really, really good hardcore wrestling. But I think, and I think it's just the combination of the guys that I was in there with. There's a backstory to that match that I'm just going to tell it right now. I'm awesome. Just going to, yeah, I don't know that this has been said publicly, really. We were right before the main event, and I'm telling this because there was a podcast or some online review was like, the match was fine, but it was too long. It was too long. And because it wasn't you guys, was
no, not at all.
No. So the match itself was about 25 minutes long,
mm-hmm.
and then there was a promo afterwards. Mance likes to talk, so
mm-hmm.
It was a long segment, and then you got to clean up some thumbtacks, you got to clean up some debris, you got to clean up a little bit of blood. But the main event that night, Christian Rose was in the main event facing John Morrison, a little rematch 10 years in the making. And John Morrison had terrible travel issues that whole day. So I'm not burying him at all. It wasn't his fault. As far as I know, it wasn't his fault, but he was having travel issues all day. And just the scene in the locker room, the scene in Gorilla before and after the match, that's one of those things that fans don't get to see. It's one of those things where it's like you wish you had a camera crew there that day, because we don't know where the main event's at. We're communicating with him. He just landed. We have one match left. Go out there and, if it takes an hour, it takes an hour, And I remember communicating with the referees, as I'm bleeding out. And I mean, that match took pieces of all four of us that day. Mm-hmm. Manders had to get 12 staples in his head after that match. So he's bleeding out. I'm bleeding out. Actually, all four of us were. And I'm communicating with the referee. I'm like, is John Morrison in the building yet? They're like, nope. I'm like, oh boy.
Oh no.
I mean, there's so much in that match. If you go back and watch it, where you're like, wow, like, so yeah. I mean, it's we got to a point where they're like, all right, Morrison is I think he literally landed at the airport when we were about to go out for the match.
Okay.
And Midway is at that time of night, you can probably get to Midway in an hour 10, hour 15.
From LaSalle.
Yeah, from LaSalle.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had somebody waiting at the airport for him, and they zoomed back, but it was like, they're giving us mile marker updates in the ring.
Instead of time cues, you're getting mile markers.
Oh yeah, it's like all right, yeah, Morrison's 15 minutes away. It's like, all right, let's take it. Oh, but the crowd was into it. Like I said, I don't want to be negative, but I've literally only heard that one person be like, it was too long, and it's like everybody else loved it. I was getting stopped at like I went to a derby with my girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know when it was, maybe a couple weeks after that, a couple months. I don't recall when exactly it was. Maybe like an hour from home. And I'm sure there's some crossover between, I don't know what derby, like it was like
demolition derby.
Yeah, it was a demolition derby. Yeah. I'm sure there's some crossover wrestling fans, and it just wasn't really my thing. But I'm sitting there drinking some beers, and somebody comes up and they're like, "Excuse me, you're Hartenbower, right? That match that you had at Dream, that was like the craziest thing we've ever seen." And I'm just like, "That's awesome. That's what I want, you know." And I still have people kind of come up to me and they're like, "That was, you know," and people that are like, "Yeah, that was our first show since you know, the original run of DreamWAVE, and yeah, our kids were just born, and you know, whatever, and now so this was, oh yeah, we're gonna bring the kids to wrestling." I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry, you know. But I remember specific like instances in that match of like I got blood pouring out of my head, and I'm like in the aisleway, and like I'm looking up, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go this way because there's all these kids looking at me, but they're loving it, they're going crazy. I'm like, okay. And I mean, you still have, I mean, I have hardcore matches relatively often, and I'll have people be like, "Is that real blood?" I'm like, "You're standing right next to me."
Of course it is.
Yeah.
That's a great, dude. That's a great story where you guys had to go out there and essentially fill time, and you did it in a violent way, and you got a memory with it, dude. That's a great story. That's a great story.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen matches where I'm like, "Ooh, this match is too long." You know, it's
right.
Whether it's on TV or whether it's on a show that I'm personally on, or it's you know, pay-per-view. I watch like pay-per-views. I'm like, man, everything was great, but not every match needed to be 20 minutes long, you know? So that's probably the match that I would say, like, if you were to watch a Hartenbower match from this, you know, from DreamWAVE, I would say, you know, that one.
Absolutely. Sounds like I'm going to go out of my way to find it so I can see it now.
Yeah, it's on IWTV from December of last year.
Okay. I remember seeing pictures from it. I have not seen the match, but I do remember seeing photos from it after. And yes, it was very colorful.
Yeah, that. And then obviously the match with Rose, you know, that didn't end the way that I wanted it to, but, you know, that was my first, one-on-one shot at the DreamWAVE Championship. So that had some moments in there where you're like, you know, this is Hartenbower, this is DreamWAVE, you know, and I don't want to spoil any of that for anybody that wants to go check that out. But there was some stuff in that match where you're like, this is crazy.
Yes.
So,
it was awesome, dude. It was an awesome match. So
just great storytelling. And
yes.
Yeah, we were both there live to see that, and that was my first DreamWAVE show, and I hope it's not my last because I haven't been able to get back there. But fantastic match, well put together, loved every minute of it.
Awesome, that makes me very happy to hear that.
Let's talk about like current product. I mean, I don't know if you watch a lot of stuff currently, but like what trips your trigger, what piques your interest with the current product that's out there? Like, what do you tune in for? Like, I can't miss this, or this is I want to watch this guy's matches or this girl's matches.
I just watched All Out. Was it All Out last weekend?
Yes, it was last weekend.
Ago. Yep. I just watched that. I like AEW. You know, I know they get a lot of they take a lot of slack, a lot of, you know, whatever. It's
sure.
But I like and WWE is like hot. It's hotter than ever right now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was probably the most recent show that I watched. But specifically, like, I love watching, like, there's some of the storytelling. Like, I can watch Bryan Danielson wrestle all day long, but I know that I can't go like that. I can watch Will Ospreay all day long, but I know that I can't go like that. And Danielson a little bit more, like, I'll pick things from his matches and be like, how can I apply that in the style, you know, that I work?
Sure.
But I mean, like, the guys that you see, like, on TV today, like Jon Moxley, you know, I love watching Moxley.
Are you digging the new Moxley storyline, kind of where that's going?
Yeah, I've caught a little bit of it. I guess it's pretty early, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
You know, I might, like, things pop up on my Twitter where people are try to, I'm like, sometimes I'll fall down a little rabbit hole where I'm like, they're talking about like Shane McMahon joining him. I'm like, I don't know. That'd be crazy. I don't know how it applies necessarily, but
right.
I don't, I'm not sitting there watching every second of it. So I just kind of see how it plays out. And if somebody tells me, oh man, hey, you got to check this out, I'll go out of my way to watch it. But I mean, I don't remember the last time I sat down and watched like an episode of Raw, like live or anything like that. But like the current products, what you see on TV it's great. They're both hot right now. I think they just moved SmackDown to USA.
Yes, they did.
So I'm sure that was big, and I know Netflix is picking up Raw, or they already did, but I think that's going to be in January. So I'm sure those first couple episodes will be must-watch TV. So, but yeah, current guys that I watch. I mean, I'm looking forward to Eddie Kingston coming back. Big fan of him. I actually had a match with him in 2017. I'd love to run that back one day. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that we have so many hours of TV, because there's a lot of guys that deserve, personally speaking, like Mike Bennett, like I'm glad that he has the platform that he has.
Absolutely.
I could wrestle him or tag with him 7 days a week, and it would be great.
Let me backtrack a little bit. We were talking about your matches, and I would feel bad personally if I didn't bring up a match that I saw live. The reason I'm bringing it up, it had a unique element that I've never seen before. I want to know if you had done it before, but talking about, I was in Comanche, Iowa for a Zawa show. You were wrestling Matt Hatter, former guest of the show. You guys brought out a bag of bottle caps in this match. I have never seen that.
That was him. That was all him. I mean, here's the thing. Is like I've had, these hardcore matches, and I've had hardcore matches at very, very, very PG, family friendly shows.
Yep.
Where I make it work. I've had you probably, another thing about that tag team match at DreamWAVE, you probably won't see that ever again. That's another thing that makes it so special is, we're kind of getting into that, like, okay, we don't have to be super, super family friendly. It's family friendly, but like, the kids are seeing a lot worse on whatever.
You're absolutely right.
If there's a middle finger here or there, or if there's, a little bit of blood, nobody's going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe that, but like Zawa, I've had, I think I've had 3, what I would call hardcore matches there. And they were all different, and they were all very physical. One of them, I speared someone into a pool, which was fun. Another one was a TLC match that was very, very physical. Actually, the amount of chair shots that I took in that match, that was kind of crazy. And then the match in is it Comanche?
Comanche.
With Hatter, and that was a bar show. So I think that's the kind of venue where you're like, okay, things a little, you have a little bit more leniency of the things that you can do. But we're not doing thumbtacks. There's not going to be blood. There's not going to be, whatever. And with, I don't want to call it a character, but everybody associates me with beer for some reason.
It could be the cool merch that you have. That is,
yeah. Hey, that too. Exactly.
It could be that.
so Hatter's like, yeah, we'll do bottle caps. And I was like, bottle caps? And I'd never heard of it before. I've taken Legos before. Legos suck.
I could just imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear like, oh, I stepped on my kid's Lego or something.
Yes.
But yeah, the thumbtacks. I was like, is that gonna get a reaction? Like, is that gonna? And it does, because you get the sound. Mm-hmm. You get the sound of all the bottle caps hitting each other, and pain wise, it was much easier than thumbtacks. But I'll tell you what, some of those you land on. I mean, I had some cuts on my elbow and back, and yeah, so that was a pretty cool element of that match, and where it was placed and all of that. But yeah, the bottle caps, that was Hatter's idea.
That was very unique, and I thought it was really cool and well done. You answered part of my next question, but which is worse, Legos or thumbtacks?
I haven't done the Legos in a long time, and I've done thumbtacks quite a bit. I don't know. Pain. It doesn't really. I mean, the thumbtacks, like, I've had them like stuck in like the back of my head. You get them in the elbow. Where am I at here? Like in between your fingers, like, is kind of rough. But like with your adrenaline going and everything, it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, of the basic like pro wrestling, like hardcore stuff, you really can't go wrong with a well-placed, good and hard chair shot. That hurts. I mean, you know, the chair shots hurt. They really do. So it's not, for me, like, I know you asked I mean, probably the thumbtacks are probably a little worse. But just because they are actually piercing your skin. Right. But yeah, to kind of, go a step farther on that, pain wise, chair shots are always worse, I think.
Well, this is the part of the show where we usually ask the talent to preview where they're going to be at on upcoming shows. Obviously, you can't do that, but go ahead. I
actually can.
Okay. Oh, act good. Card subject to change. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Hey, because I'd be going crazy without wrestling.
Yep.
So, and I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, not at all. Not at all, man. Not at all.
But yeah, I think I'd be going crazy if I was just sitting at home doing nothing. So I'll still be at AAW. Mm-hmm. And everybody will just have to kind of tune in to see where that goes. Sure. It's not going to be a DreamWAVE show without me. But I'll be at Ego Pro in Joliet on October 5th. Mainly backstage producing, agenting. But I definitely wanted to get that out there and give that show a little plug. I think there's still some tickets available for that show at the Forge in Joliet. Ego runs a pretty cool show there. So definitely wanted to put that over. But yeah, for the most part, I canceled. That's another thing they don't teach. I had I think 12 promoters I had to talk to, which was exhausting and depressing to say, hey, because some of those places it's here's Hartenbower versus whoever. It's a match. Okay, well, you can just plug in somebody else. Some of those places, there's storylines and, cards subject to change. I just had to go to La Crosse, Wisconsin a couple days ago, and, I had to relinquish that heavyweight championship that I've had for, I think, 5 months now. So
I was just going to ask you about that. That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah. So it's, that changes companies' plans. It changes my plans. But yeah, so yeah, I had to cancel a lot of shows, and but there's still some places that you'll see me at. So just wanted to get that out there. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. We want the talent to come on here and promote the shows, and of course, promote your socials. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, X. I still can't just call it X.
It's Twitter, right?
It's Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter.
Yep.
At M Hartenbower on there. Instagram. I try to post daily on Instagram. It's been a little harder recently, but at M Hartenbower 34 on Instagram, and like Facebook. I just have my personal profile, but I add whoever on there pretty much, because I post all of my wrestling content on there. And I actually just started last night. I've had a YouTube account forever, I guess. I realized last night, I was like, oh, you've been a whatever since 2015 or whatever. I was like, maybe I should post some stuff on here. But I kind of updated, that kind of stuff. And I'm going to start adding some matches on YouTube. I'm thinking, and maybe you guys can help me out with this. I'm thinking maybe like I add a match, once a week, maybe every Sunday I put a match on there and kind of highlight that. And, YouTube, at Hartenbower PW, on that. And, I think that's it for the socials.
Yeah. If you put a match out there a week and maybe a little story or something about it behind the scenes, people are going to flock to that. People will watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I went on your Instagram. I already followed you before the show, but I want to congratulate you, man. You made the PWI 500. That's a big deal, man. Congrats.
It's awesome. Thank you. I know, you read some of the stuff online and people are like, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's not, because you look and there's gotta be, between just WWE and AEW alone, there's probably, I don't know how many contracted talents they have, but I don't know if it's 500, but I bet it's 300, maybe more. You have people that are like, well, you're not better than so-and-so. And it's, they kind of, they have their criteria, and they look at, the different things that they look at. It's, I don't care if I'm number, 350 or number 500. It's really cool. I remember last year. So last year was the first year that I made it. Mm-hmm. And I had a buddy give me a hard time. He's like, you went down this year. I'm like, I don't think that their writers are sitting there like, yeah, Hartenbower was 411 last year, but yeah, he was missing that one, to get to like 409. I don't think they look at the first 10, they definitely, I would love to sit in and see that process. Right. But that first 100, 150, 200, there's got to be some conversations there, I'm sure. And then after that, they probably have, okay, these are our guys, and I'm sure these are the guys that are on the bubble. I was 445.
Yep.
It's awesome. I used to go, my mother would take me grocery shopping, general shopping, whatever it was, growing up. And the first thing I would get out of the car, we'd get into the grocery store, and she knew I was like, I am going to the magazines, or we'd go to the mall. I'm like, hey, I'm going to the bookstore.
Me too.
Yep. Yep. And I would sit there and, now I don't even know if you can do that. They'll probably be like, are you going to buy that? But when I was a kid, I would sit for what felt like hours. We were probably in the, maybe at the mall for an hour, or maybe, at the grocery store for a half hour, 40 minutes. But I would sit there and, it's not something that I take like, I was talking to my good buddy, Stephen Wolf, and he was actually the last 2 years, he's been the one that broke it to me. So I got the text message from him on, I guess that might have been the day I went in for surgery.
Okay.
Yeah. I got the text from him, and, we were talking about, he moved up like 200 and some spots from last year. And because I think last year was his first time in there as well. I sit there and I'm trying to be like super humble and be like, well, I get it that it's not that. And he's just like, right away, he's just like, nope, it's a huge deal. It's awesome. Don't let anybody take it away from you, So I'm very proud of it. I can't wait to grab last year I found one copy. This year I'm going to make sure I get multiple copies.
I can't wait till I don't buy a lot of magazines anymore, but that's the one that I buy every year. It absolutely is.
Yeah, I'd like to get it framed and something like that. I'll figure something out. But it's a big deal. It's really, really cool.
Now, of course, you've talked about your socials. Congratulations on the PWI. That's fantastic. I would feel bad if we didn't talk about your merch page on Pro Wrestling Tees.
Yeah, prowrestlingtees.com/Hartenbower. I try to add a new design or two every like 6 months or so. I say that, and it's probably been about 8 months or so since I put something up. But I still get some sales from a shirt, one of my first shirts, that Spears and Beers shirt. That's probably been my hottest seller over the last 10 years. That shirt still sells occasionally, which is pretty cool for somebody at my level. And I'm not saying that I'm selling, 50 shirts or whatever, but occasionally you'll get a notification that says, hey, new sale on Pro Wrestling Tees, and I'll look, and it's that shirt, or some of the other beer parody designs. But I think with all this free time that I got coming up, I think it's time to get another design out there and get that up. But yeah,
let us know when you do. We will definitely hype that up for you.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Well, I want to thank you so very much. This has been a pleasure speaking with you. We've had a lot of fun. I do hope you come back, talk wrestling with us again, because I'm sure we just scratched the surface of things we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I got time, so let's do it. Now
you got the time right. And thank you for coming on here. I know after having surgery and sitting there, it's probably not the most comfortable thing, but we really appreciate you coming on and chewing the fat with us about wrestling, man. We could talk for hours and hours with people about wrestling. We love it so much, and love having people on here that love it. And you're obviously involved with it. You're in it. You love it, and it definitely shows in your work. And we appreciate you coming on here, man.
I appreciate you guys. Absolutely. It was nice for me to not just sit around and think, like about medical bills or about, oh man, work or, whatever. I was watching a little football earlier, so it was nice to kind of, sit down and talk wrestling.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
That is going to put a bow on this episode of Card Subject to Change. Just a reminder, we'll be back midweek with our secondary show, The Kickout. So stay tuned with that. We've been talking with Mike Hartenbower. If you missed it, it's in our archives. Obviously you're listening to it right now, but
it will be in the archives.
Yes, go back and rewatch it as many times. Like, share, subscribe. We appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. I am the Wizard CZ, and for my partner, Never Wrong, Nick Bull, this has been the Card Subject to Change podcast, and we will see you Wednesday for the Kickout and right back here next Sunday for Card Subject to Change.